Hey, how's everybody doing today? Hotep. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Hope everybody's doing well today. Hey, I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. I want to check my volume here, make sure everything's coming through all right. Testing 1, 2, 3. So you all should be able to hear me on Facebook. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, wanted to check my volume. All right, so hey, the date is July 4th, 2017. The 4th of July once again. 4th of July once again. So you'll see celebrations of America's Independence Day. We just sent out an email newsletter. We talked about 6 facts or 6 things that you probably didn't know about the 4th of July. You know, I did a broadcast a couple of days ago where I dealt with Frederick Douglass. Arguably his most well-known, most popular speech. What to the Negro is the 4th of July? What to the Negro is the 4th of July? Okay. And what I'm going to do is we're going to talk some about that, put the 4th of July or the 4th of July, as Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango called it. And Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, if you're not familiar with him, he was one of our great African-centered scholar warriors. And he wrote 2 very important books. Not the only 2 books that he wrote, but 2 very important books. African People, European Holidays, A Mental Genocide. Book 1 and book 2, African People and European Holidays and Mental Genocide, book 1 and book 2. Okay. So check those out. But he called it the 4th of July. Okay. Because they lied to us. They try to convince us that this is our Independence Day. And it's like, no. Many African people were enslaved July 4th, 1776. And most of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence didn't even sign it until August 2nd, 1776. Okay. So what we're going to do, we'll do 3 main things. We're going to talk some about Frederick Douglass. We'll deal with some of the history of Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. I'm going to talk some about John Hanson as well, because a lot of people think the Black John Hanson was the first president or first Black president, something like that. No, not true at all. We're going to dispel that myth, because that plays right into the depiction that you see on the back of the $2 bill. Okay. And then so we'll deal with that. And then also we'll do a brief overview of an online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. And that is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. And all the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. And we'll post a link right here on the thread of the broadcast. And share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay. For those just tuning in, I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page right here, the African History Network. Be sure to follow us. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. I'm in a number of documentaries. This is one of them that I'm in, one of the most popular ones, Black Friday. Well, I don't have my Black Friday shirt. I don't have this shirt from Power and One Clothing. But I'm in the Black Friday documentaries, also Resurrecting Black Wall Street, the blueprint from Dr. Boyce Watkins, and yourblackworld.net. And then also a documentary that's about to drop, Elementary Genocide Part 3, Elementary Genocide Part 3 from director Raheem Shabazz. That comes out August 22nd. Okay. 2017. All right. So first, I want to do a little bit with Frederick Douglass. Okay. And then I'm going to share these 2 broadcasts I did recently. Okay. With you. So Frederick Douglass wrote 3 autobiographies. A lot of people don't know this. Frederick Douglass wrote 3 autobiographies in his life. Okay. So he lives from 1817 or 1818 to 1895, because he did not know his birth date. He did not know exactly the year he was born or the date he was born. Okay. So, all right. And let me post this again here, a pin it. But his first autobiography is this one right here. Okay. And I read it before and I pulled it out a couple of days ago and started reading it again, man. And this is deep. He wrote this in 1845. He was about 27 or 28 years old. Okay. This is, make sure you all can see this here. Okay, so this is his first documentary, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. This was the first. This was his first autobiography, I should say, first autobiography that he wrote. And I just want to share an excerpt from this with you because a lot of times when we read about the enslavement of African people, a lot of times it may not be a firsthand account. This is a firsthand account. Okay. Frederick Douglass, we know, was literate. He learned to read and write while he was a slave. Okay. He was very articulate, very intelligent. Okay. But on page 1, chapter 1, he talks about, he says, I was born in Tuckahoe near Hillsborough. Okay. Tuckahoe near Hillsborough. Okay. This is in Maryland. He said, and about 12 miles from Easton, Easton in Talbot County, Maryland. He said, I have no accurate knowledge of my age, never having seen any authentic record containing it. By far, the larger part of the slaves know as little of their ages as horses know of theirs. And it is the wish of most masters within my knowledge to keep their slaves thus ignorant. So what he's saying is most slaves and most of the ones he came in contact with did not know the year they were born, did not know the date they were born. Okay. And he said most slave masters, to his knowledge, wanted to keep it that way. He goes on to say, I do not remember to have ever met a slave who could tell of his birthday. I do not remember to have ever met a slave who could tell of his birthday. They seldom come nearer to it than planting time, harvest time, cherry time, springtime, or fall time. So the enslaved African people didn't have birth certificates. So when it came to estimating their age and their birth date, they estimated it based upon the seasons and based upon the planting of crops, planting time, harvest time, cherry time, springtime, or fall time. He goes on to say, a want of information concerning my own was a source of unhappiness to me during childhood. The white children could tell their ages. I could not tell why the white children could tell their ages. I could not tell why I ought to be deprived of the same privilege, because it's going to be white school children who are going to eventually continue to teach Frederick Douglass how to read and write. While he's enslaved, he had like white friends who were free. Okay. And they're going to covertly teach him how to read and write after his slave master catches his wife teaching Frederick Douglass how to read or write, and he forbade her to do so. Okay. Because the slave master basically felt if you teach a slave to read and write, it's going to make him unfit to be a slave. He said the white children could tell their ages. I could not tell why I ought to be deprived of the same privilege. I was not allowed to make any inquiries of my master concerning it. So he's saying he wasn't even allowed to ask his master, when was he born? What year? What date? He said he deemed all such inquiries, he's referring to his slave master, he deemed all such inquiries on the part of a slave improper and impertinent and evidence of a restless spirit. The nearest estimate I can give makes me now between 27 and 28 years of age. Okay, because he wrote this in 1845. This is straight from Frederick Douglass. Okay, this is his first autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, page 1, chapter 1. Okay, he wrote in 1845, so he's either 27 or 28 years old. So this is him explaining this. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna get to Frederick Douglass' speech here in just a minute. I want to lay some context here because I've been going back rereading this. This is my copy of his narrative. I've been going back rereading this, man. This thing is deep. Okay. So everybody share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay. Yeah, this thing right here is deep. All right. And oftentimes, we take for granted. I think oftentimes we really take for granted being able to know the date we were born, being able to know the year we were born. Certain things like that, I think we just take for granted. When you actually read slave narratives, it's like, whoa, it's like, man, this thing is deep. So Frederick Douglass goes on to talk about, he says, I come to this from here. So he says the nearest estimate I can give of his age makes me 27 or 28 years old. He said, I come to this conclusion, basically, from hearing my master say, sometime during 1835, I was about 7 years old. 17. Sometime during 1835, I was about 17 years old. Okay. So he can just make an estimate. He goes on to say, my mother's name was Harriet Bailey, because his birth name was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. That was his birth name. Okay. He said his mother's name was Harriet Bailey. She was the daughter of Isaac and Betsy Bailey, both colored and quite dark. My mother was of a darker complexion than either my grandmother or grandfather. My father was a white man. He was admitted to be such by all I ever heard speak of my parentage. The opinion was also whispered that my master was my father. The opinion was also whispered that my master, my slave master, was my father. Okay. He said, I know nothing. I know nothing. The means of knowing was withheld from me. Okay. My mother and I were separated when I was but an infant, before I knew her as my mother. Now, this is where it gets really deep. Okay. And I have a 4-month-old daughter, right? This is where it gets really deep. Okay. He grew up, he only saw his mother 4 or 5 times in his lifetime. Frederick Douglass he was raised while he was young by his grandmother. He only saw his mother 4 or 5 times in his lifetime, and that was when he was a little boy. He said, my mother and I were separated when I was but an infant, before I knew her as my mother. It is common custom in the part of Maryland from which I ran away to part children from their mothers at a very early age, frequently before the child has reached its 12th month. Frequently before the child has reached its 12th month, its mother is taken from it and hired out on some farm a considerable distance off, and the child is placed under the care of an old woman too old for field labor. Okay, so oftentimes on plantations, when you had women who were old and they couldn't work in the fields anymore, they would take care of the children who were too young to work in the fields. For what this separation is done, I don't know, unless it is to be to hinder the development of the child's affection towards his mother, and to blunt and destroy the natural affection of the mother for the child. Thus is the inevitable result. He's saying, I don't know why they would do this to somebody. To take a child away from his mother by the time the child reaches his 12th month. Oftentimes the mother never see that child again. So he goes on to say, I never saw my mother to know her as such more than 4 or 5 times in my life. And each of these times was very short in duration and at night. She was hired by a Mr. Stewart who lived about 12 miles from my home. She made her journeys to see me in the night, traveling the whole distance on foot after the performance of her day's work. She was a field hand, and a whooping is the penalty of not being in the field at sunrise unless a slave has special permission from his or her master to the contrary, a permission which they seldom get, and one that gives to him, that gives it the proud name of being a kind master. Okay, so listen to what Frederick Douglass is saying. This is on page 2 of his autobiography, his first autobiography. He wrote 3. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Okay, and share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. This is some deep stuff. So what he's saying is that he only saw his mother 4 or 5 times, and this was when he was a child, and his mother lived about 12 miles away from him. And at the end of the day, after her working in the field doing her chores, okay, she would walk 12 miles by foot to come see him at night to spend a little time with her son. And he only saw her 4 or 5 times in his lifetime. So he says, he says that if you had a slave master who gave a slave permission, basically at the end of the day, to go see their children, go see their children, things like this, come back, if they gave him permission to leave, okay, he said they would be considered a kind master. So he says, I do not recollect of ever seeing my mother in the light of day. I do not recollect ever seeing my mother in the light of day. She was with me in the night. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep. But long before I waked, she was gone. Very little communication ever took place between us. Death soon ended what little we could have while she lived. And with it, her hardships and suffering. So he's saying she died and her hardships and suffering went away because she passed away. He says she died when I was about 7 years old on one of my master's farms near Lee's Mill. I was not allowed to be present during her illness. I was not allowed to be present at her death. I was not allowed to be present for her burial. She was gone long before I knew anything about it. Never having enjoyed to any considerable extent her soothing presence, her tender and watchful care, I received the tidings of her death with much the same emotions I should have probably felt at the death of a stranger. I received the tidings of her death with much the same emotions I should have probably felt at the death of a stranger. All right. I mean, Frederick Douglass' autobiography is deep. I've read it before. I was going back reading it again because I just did last Thursday on Wake Up with Steve Hood on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. I'm on the morning show here in Detroit, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF. I'm on every Thursday, the Wake Up with Steve Hood morning show, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And we dealt with Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. And I pulled out his autobiography again, and his first one, started rereading it. Man, this thing is deep. So he wrote 3 autobiographies. His first one he wrote in 1845. He's going to escape to freedom in 1838. He wrote this in 1845. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Okay, get this from your local African American bookseller, bookstore, etc. Right? Okay. So what I want to do, I want to go to this. I'm going to get into 2 presentations that I did in the past couple of days. Dealing with Frederick Douglass, and then one also that I posted a couple of weeks ago dealing with John Hanson, because Frederick Douglass leads right into John Hanson. Let me just acknowledge some people on Facebook here. Musa, Carlos, Taja, Eric, We got people all over. Atlanta in the house. Hey, I'll be in Atlanta July 14th through the 16th for the Liberated Minds Black Homeschooling and Education Expo. I'm coming to Atlanta. Visit liberatedmindsexpo.com, liberatedmindsexpo.com. Okay. It's a Black homeschooling conference that takes place every year, the third weekend in July in Atlanta. I'm there each year. I'm one of the presenters. I'm one of the vendors also. So I'll be in Atlanta in 2 weeks, the 14th through the 16th, July 2017. Aisha said, so heartbreaking. Carlton's in North Carolina. Carlos, her hardships were gone. But see, this is the type of but even if Douglass did not have a close relationship with his mother, and from his account he didn't, right? And he said that basically the news of her death, basically he had the same emotion to that as he would of the death of a stranger. But as you go through life, this causes an emptiness because you're cut off from your ancestry, your heritage, and not knowing what type of woman your mother was, you know, not knowing a lot about her family, things like this. There's a emptiness that comes from that type of separation. Okay. All right. And then also, if you like this type of information, register for the online class that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, this is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. As soon as you register, you'll be able to watch the last 2 classes. Classes meets on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you miss anything, you go back and watch it over and over again. It's only $40 for the entire course, and we have about 12 hours of bonus content also. Okay, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. I'm going to go to this clip here, the segment where I really dealt with Frederick Douglass. Nichelle is in Texas. John is in Texas also watching. YD's Emmanuel Wilson, Florida in the house. Okay. All right. So let me go to this. Let me set up the screen share here. We'll go to this right here. How's everybody doing today? All right. So class is in session for the 4th of July. Class is in session for the 4th of July. All right, let's go to this right here. Okay. 1830s. Okay. So you have this photograph. Now, that photograph of John Hanson is circa 1852. It's on the Library of Congress's website. Okay. If you read the article that I wrote, No, the Black John Hanson is not president, I break down all this in that article. And you can read all of my articles at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the link, read articles by Michael Imhotep. I take you through this. I'll show you the original painting of the drafting of the Declaration of Independence by the 5-man committee, and that painting was done by John Trumbull in 1818. Okay, so there's a lot of history showing that there's a lot of evidence showing. Wait a second, there were 2 John Hansons. Okay, so and now for those just tuning in, let me see. I think we're broadcasting on Facebook Live now also. Hey, welcome to the African History Network show. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We're doing a special broadcast. Normally, I'm on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, but they are rerunning old episodes tonight because of the 4th of July weekend. So we're dealing with Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. And I want to make sure that we have sound also. How's everybody doing watching us on Facebook? Okay, and we're broadcasting on the Blog Talk Radio Network on our Blog Talk Radio channel, the African History Network show on Blog Talk Radio. So in the link for the broadcast here, we have the link how to listen to the show on Blog Talk Radio. You can also call in and listen by phone, 914-338-1375, Okay, so what I'm going to do, I talked a little bit about John Hanson right there, right? So what I want to do, I want to go quickly to this presentation. Is an excerpt of a lecture that I did, and in this presentation, I deal with John Hanson, the Black John Hanson, and break down why John Hanson was not president, because this ties right into the back of the $2 bill, which a lot of people think is the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That's not the signing of the Declaration of Independence on the back of the $2 bill, July 4th, 1776. That is the drafting of the Declaration of Independence by the 5-man committee, June 28th, 1776, June 28th, 1776. Okay, so I'm going to go to this right here. This is a clip. John Hanson was not president, exposing the myths. John Hanson was not president, exposing the myths. Okay, and let me set this up. How's everybody doing? Let me set this up here. Okay, there we go. Very interesting. How many people know this is? Okay. All right. So what have you heard about John Hanson? Say again, brother. President of the Articles of Confederation. Okay. You saying that's what you heard, or you saying he was? Okay. The sweat line. Say again? The sweat line. The sweat line. Okay. All right. Now, what I say may be outside of some compass of. He's on the picture of the $1 bill. $2 bill. That's what they say. $2 bill. When year did he die? Long time ago. I know that. on the back of the $2 bill, what is that depicted? The what? No, on the back of the $2 bill. They're white men on the back of the $2 bill. They aren't back there because he's president. Well, what is that depicted on the back of the $2 bill? That's when there was signing of Declaration of Independence. Okay. You can disagree with me, that's fine. You know, but I'm gonna show you this stuff. If you still want to disagree with me, that's cool. Like I said in the beginning, you don't have to take my word for this. Go do your own research. Okay. Now. All right. So when we look at the $2 bill, if you look on the reverse side, this is what is depicted right now. Unfortunately, there's some misinformation about the $2 bill. If you look at what's circled in red, the way this myth goes is that this person is John Hanson the Moor, the Black John Hanson. Okay. This scene is from June 28th, 1776. It's not the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It is the drafting of the Declaration of Independence by the 5-man committee. Okay. The adoption of the Declaration of Independence doesn't occur until the 4th of July, 1776, but it's not completely signed until about August of 1776. August 2nd of 1776, you have about 52 signers who have signed it, but there's still 6 who have not signed it. But it was adopted the 4th of July, 1776. Okay. Now, I've heard some Prince Hall Masons say that that's Prince Hall there as well. Okay. Now, here's the problem with this theory. This depiction is from a painting done by an artist named John Trumbull, which was commissioned in 1817. Okay. Next, what you see here is the actual painting from John Trumbull. All right. You can go to answers.com and search for $2 bill as well as Declaration of Independence. When you search for Declaration of Independence, look at the entry from the Columbia Encyclopedia, which does an excellent job on it. And they talk about the actual signing of it August 2nd, 1776, as opposed to July 4th, which most people think is the 4th of July. However, even though John Hancock signed it July 4th, most of the others did not. Okay. Now, when you look at the painting, you'll see that nobody on the paintings of African descent. You'll see that the person who we had circled on the $2 bill, in fact, just has a shadow over his face. He's clearly European. He just has a shadow over his face. What has happened is that when that painting gets depicted on the $2 bill and you're dealing with shades of white and green or what have you, okay, it darkens his face and it gives fodder to the myth that this was a person of African descent. All right. As we get more into this dealing with John Hanson and dispelling this myth about John Hanson, you'll understand this as well. But on the back of the $2 bill, there was no one of African descent on the back of the $2 bill. All right. And this is easily verifiable. Proper documentation ends all conversation.
All right. So now, have you all heard also that he was a senator in Liberia?
Yeah, I heard that.
You heard that? Okay. Can anybody tell me what year he was born in?
1731?
John Hanson. Anybody tell me?
1831.
Okay. Now, what year was Liberia founded?
Probably like 1800.
1821 by the American Colonization Society. And now we're starting to cook. All right, now, I don't use Wikipedia a lot as a source unless I can verify what's going on. Because I do, this is frozen. I do a lot of research and back up what I say. All right, now, how many people have looked at this picture? How many people have really looked at it?
Yeah.
Okay. You notice this is a picture, not a painting, right? Okay. When were cameras invented?
Oh.
Type of picture this is called a daguerreotype. First camera. The daguerreotype cameras were created in 1826. Okay. Now, if we look at what's here, and there's a link on loc.gov I want to show you. All right. It says here for John Hanson. This is from Wikipedia, but we can verify this stuff. It says he was an African American associated with the American Colonization Society, which sought to relocate blacks in Liberia. In Liberia, he served as a senator from Grand Bassa County. Senator Hanson has recently been confused with the earlier John Hanson, a white politician from Maryland who served as president of the Continental Congress during the American Revolution. According to this urban myth, John Hanson of Maryland was actually black and also the president of the United States. Internet sites promoting the hoax used the photograph concerning John Hanson of Liberia to support the claim, even though photography had not yet been invented when the early John Hanson was living. Okay, now if you go look up the daguerreotype, daguerreotype camera, that was invented in 1826. Okay, daguerreotyp. Don't take my word for this. Go look that up, and it gives you the history cameras. And now also the picture that they showed you from research that I've done, that's from around 1856. We don't know if the technology in 1826, when the daguerreotype was created, could produce that quality picture. See, that could be second generation technology, third generation technology. Let me give you an example. How many people knew that you had some people like working in government or high-level sales? They had cell phones in their car in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Yeah. People know that, right? Yeah. Okay, so and my dad used to work for Motorola in the 70s, so he had one in his car.
James Bond had one in 19.
James Bond had one. Yeah. If you look at the Bill Cosby Sidney Poitier movie, Uptown Saturday Night. Yeah. Biggie Smalls has one in his car. Right. That's not make believe. That technology actually existed. Everybody just didn't have one. The bills were probably $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month.
Yeah. President Kennedy had touch-tone phone.
Okay, yeah.
When he was president.
Yeah, because
he was 63, so
yeah,
they had it. They had the technology they had was quite a ways back.
Exactly.
And the tones on the movie, the submarine movie, Forward on the Bottom of the Sea.
Okay.
The tones on there that movie was made in 1963, and the tones on that movie would give you a government office if you would took your old phone and put it up to the TV and then put the tones into the phone.
Okay.
It would give you the United States government classified area.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So here's the thing. It's like somebody saying, well, people had phones in their car in the 70s and 80s, so they were sending text messages then. When all text messages, first text message was sent in 1992. So they didn't have that technology, especially out on the market. That's coming from digital technology. They didn't have that technology. So just because somebody had a cell phone in their car in 1960 does not mean it was sending text messages. Okay, that's those generations. When the daguerreotype is invented, we don't even know if it could, I don't even know if it could produce that quality of picture. Okay, that's from 1856. That picture. Okay, now he serves Continental Congress 1781, 1782. He died in 1783. And if people think he was the same guy who was a senator in Liberia, okay, well, Liberia wasn't founded until 1821. Okay, and I forgot his exact birthday. I had this somewhere. Forgot his exact birthday, but based upon his birthday, if he was also a senator of Liberia, the youngest he could be at that time was 105 years old. Okay, and that's 1821. If that picture of him, that's a good daguerreotype, if that picture was taken in 1826, based upon his birthday, the youngest he could be there is about 110. If he's the same, if people are trying to tell me he's the same guy who was a senator in Liberia. Okay, now, up here. Now, on this, in this article, they provide the links to back up what they're saying. There's a link here references American Colonization Society. It's a link that takes you to loc.gov, which is the Library of Congress's website. That's where they have a lot of artifacts, pictures, things like that. Okay, they show you the daguerreotype picture of Senator John Hanson, who was a senator to Liberia, and it's circa 1856. Okay, what's happened? No offense to anybody. What's happened is he has been confused with a white senator named John Hanson. This guy right here. This is a commemorative. You can look this up. Don't take my word for this. I did a lot of research on this. This is a commemorative stamp from the U.S. Postal Service, 1981. Senator John Hanson. It says John Hanson, Presidential Congress, President Continental Congress. Okay, this is from 1981. You can Google that. You can go to usstamps.com. That's where I got it from. loc.gov may have it also. Okay. So what's happened is now the first problem we have is that he died in 1783, so he died about 40 years before the cameras invented to take the picture that he's showing. That's the first problem we have. Second problem also is if you look at his contemporaries, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, who was the second president, not to be confused with his son, John Quincy Adams, who was the sixth president, because Michelle Bachmann didn't know the difference between two of them. She was running for president. Samuel Adams, these people, these were all contemporaries back at that time, 1776, right? You don't see any photographs of them, only paintings, because they died before the camera was invented. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with. They're confused now. A couple of days ago, I talked to Booker T. Coleman because I already did the research on this. So I just wanted to see what he said. And I asked him about this. I'm doing a presentation on Saturday. I'm going to deal with this, know the touch the subject, things like that. Don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but you know, need to know the truth. So I said, what do you know about John Hanson being the president? He said there were two John Hansons. We're confusing it with the white senator, John Hanson. Okay. Then I break down stuff to him. I said, well, the camera wasn't invented until 1826. So how could you have a picture of a man who died in 1783? So I was breaking down stuff to him. He wasn't even sure, didn't even know about. And then I broke this down to him about the stamp showing the real John Hanson. But he told me, he said, even if the Moor John Hanson was president, because I'm not denying that he was a Moor, I'm not denying that he was senator of Liberia. I understand all that. I believe that. That's true. He said, even if he was president, he said, why would we be happy about that? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, we were slaves when he became president, and we were slaves when he left the presidency. So what are we talking about? What are we bragging about? Okay, then I said, damn, we bragging about that. He said, what good did it do us? Okay, so I was trying to, I wanted to show you, but on loc.gov, yeah, they show you, I'm going to see if I can get on there. On loc.gov, they show you the daguerreotype picture of Senator to Liberia, John Hanson, the Moor, in the circa 1856, because that technology didn't exist when he died in 1783. So we're confused. Now, the problem with the internet is very powerful. But as Professor Manu and Pem explained this to me, he said you can educate or miseducate thousands of people with a few keystrokes. Okay, and unfortunately, this is what's happening. And what I explain to people is that we have thousands and thousands of years of actual history. So we don't have to try to claim something that can easily be proven wrong.
Right.
Okay, because when we put things out like that that can be proven wrong, then what it does, it tends to hurt the whole genre when it comes to African history and making a case for it in the schools, things like that. Okay, so what I'm gonna try to do is get this up, show this to you, because this is on the Found Liberia 1821. All right, when you go through, we go down here, it says additional views. Right here, it says John Hanson, 6th plate, daguerreotype, circa 1856. You click there, you look at the picture, I rest my case. That's Senator John Hanson from Liberia. They're confusing this. Now, this is from 1856, this picture. I told you the daguerreotype camera wasn't invented until 1826. This is from 1856, so he had to be down there 140 if he was the same guy. Okay, so a lot of this stuff, we just do some research, we can figure this stuff out. Okay, proper documentation ends all conversation, and that ends this presentation.
Thank you for watching Should African Americans Celebrate? All right. So let me stop that. Okay, so that was a presentation I did in 2013. I think it was. That's an excerpt we have on YouTube. First excerpt I had of that was in 2 parts. That's been viewed about 257,000 times on YouTube. I just checked it. This morning. And 2 weeks ago, I put the 2 parts together for one video. But that is excerpt of a 4-hour presentation that I did called "Should African Americans Celebrate Black History Month? Exposing the Myths." Should African Americans celebrate Black History Month, exposing the myths? Okay, so John Hanson ties right into Frederick Douglass and the Declaration of Independence, because on the back of the $2 bill, you have what people think is the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and it's not. It's the drafting of the Declaration of Independence by the 5-man committee, as I stated. Okay, so I wanted to show that to you. So we can lay a firm foundation when we deal with this history, because I understand that people are coming from different levels of understanding when it comes to history. Okay, but I wanted to deal with that, dispel these nonsensical myths. Okay, because that's what they are. These a bunch of nonsensical myths out here. And if you go to my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, you can read the article that I wrote. No, the Black John Hanson was never president. No, the Black John Hanson was never president. And then we have that video in the article. I write articles also. You can read all of my articles at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. All right. So I wanted to lay that foundation so we can properly deal with Frederick Douglass and try to deal with a chronology of history also. Okay. How's everybody doing? How you like this type of information? We have people tuned in from around the country, outside of the country. Ali, I have Google Hangouts, man. I really don't use it. I'm on YouTube more than Google Hangouts. We have like 32,000 followers on our YouTube channel. I use Facebook more than anything because we have 980,000 followers here on Facebook. Those watching on Facebook, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. I just want to acknowledge some people here on Facebook as they're sending messages. Then we're going to get back to this presentation I did on Frederick Douglass and the Declaration of Independence and the 4th of July. So we have Mind Seth here also, Sheik Way L, Lady Kosh Samples said good knowledge. Pat said peace family. Let's see who else we have here. Liz, a lot of people watching. Okay. All right, good. Okay. So, we know Frederick Douglass gave arguably his most famous speech What to the slave is the 4th of July. This was July 5th, 1852. July 5th, 1852. Okay. And a couple of days ago, I did a presentation here. We broadcasted it on Blog Talk Radio as well, dealing with Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. Okay. And I'm going to share that with you. I wanted to give some background information, some additional background information. So I shared an excerpt from Frederick Douglass' first autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. He wrote 3 autobiographies. That's his first one. He wrote in 1845. Okay. All right. How's everybody doing today? Hey, if you like this type of information, this is what we do at the African History Network. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Also teach online courses. The main course that I teach is called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We just posted a link there. It says register here. If you want to register for that course, it's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. Normally meets on Fridays. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Normally meets on Fridays. As soon as you register, you'll be able to watch the first 2 sessions. Okay. As soon as you register. And it meets Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we also have about 12 hours of bonus content also. Okay. About 12 hours of bonus content you can watch immediately. All right. So I want to go to this presentation here. Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. Q. Okay. We'll post this right here. Call in at 914-338-1375. Press the number 1 key for questions, comments. Okay. All right. So we're broadcasting here. So how's everybody doing? Okay. So we're on Facebook Live finally, and we're broadcasting on the Blog Talk Radio Network. We have Julio, we have Kay Smith, Glenda, Adrena. Okay, everybody, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. All right. So we're talking about Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. Frederick Douglass, the Declaration of Independence, and the 4th of July. We know this Tuesday, 4th of July is coming up. Some African Americans will celebrate, some not. But a lot of us don't understand the real history here. Okay. So the 4th of July, you have the American Revolutionary War going on from 1775 to 1783. You have the 13 colonies separating from Great Britain, fighting for their freedom. They want control of the crops that they're producing. They want to gain more of the wealth for the crops they're producing, have control over slavery as well, because they're totally being dominated by Great Britain. So you have the U.S. fighting for their freedom while they are enslaving African people at the same time. When we look at the American Revolutionary War, you're going to have approximately 5,000 enslaved African people fighting on behalf of the colonies, but you're going to have on the low end 20,000 to 30,000 who are going to escape to the British side and fight for the British, because the British said, if you come fight for us, when this war is over, we'll set you free. On the low end, 20,000 to 30,000 fight for the British. Okay. So June 28th, 1776, you have the drafting of the Declaration of Independence. And as I was saying before we started broadcasting on Facebook Live, the depiction that you see on the back of the $2 bill is not the signing of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776, as many people think. That's the drafting of the Declaration of Independence, June 28th, 1776, by the 5-man committee. And that was made up of Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin. They were 3 of the 5 people. Okay, now, in July 4th, 1776, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Continental Congress, which was the form of government that the that the colonies were operating under at that time, they adopted the Declaration of Independence, which proclaimed their independence, or the independence of a new United States of America from Great Britain and King George III. This declaration came 442 days after the first shots of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts, and marked an ideological expansion of the conflict that would eventually involve France's intervention on behalf of the Americans. Okay, so July 5th, 1852. July 5th, 1852. You're going to have Frederick Douglass deliver one of his most famous speeches, arguably his most famous speech. What to the slave is the 4th of July? What to the slave is the 4th of July? Okay. And he is going to deliver this to a group of women. All right. So it was the he was speaking to the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society, Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society. Okay. And they asked him to give an address. And he basically asked, did you come here to mock me? Because he's basically talking about how most of his people are enslaved African people. And, you know, he said, this 4th of July celebration is not ours. This is yours. Okay. So if we put in historical context, right, the timing of his speech, 1852. Okay. So this is 9 years before the Civil War starts. Civil War starts April 12, 1861. Okay. And this is 9 years before South Carolina succeeds from the Union. Before South Carolina succeeds from the Union. So South Carolina succeeds from the Union February. 10 other states. Okay. This is 2 years before the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 is very important because this dealt with giving sovereignty to citizens of these various territories as westward expansion starts. So instead of the federal government determining whether or not in these new western territories, whether slavery is going to take place, they left it up to the inhabitants of those territories. Okay, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854 is going to lead to the Republican Party being founded in 1854 by groups of abolitionists. When you study the founding of the Republican Party, it was partly as a response or as a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. And the Republican Party was founded to be the counter to the Democratic Party, which was largely the party of the plantation owners, the Southern aristocrats, things like this. Okay. So you have the Republican Party founded 2 years after he gives the speech. If we go back 18 years before he gives the speech, you have the creation of the Underground Railroad right around 1830. The Underground Railroad is largely in the North. It's mostly ran by African Americans, runaway slaves and free African Americans. You're going to have some white allies who help along with the Underground Railroad, but contrary to popular belief, is mainly controlled and operated by African Americans. The majority of it is in the North. Okay. So you have the Underground Railroad of 1830. And you're going to have also in 1852, you're going to have Harriet Beecher Stowe, who writes her novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, this novel is going to expose America to the horrors of slavery. Okay. It goes all across the country. It becomes an international bestseller. It sells 300,000 copies in its first year, Uncle Tom's Cabin. It is based upon the autobiography of a man named Josiah Henson. Josiah Henson. Now, Josiah Henson was a runaway slave from Maryland who becomes a Methodist minister. He goes up north and eventually goes to Canada. He becomes an educator, a Methodist minister, and he becomes a operator of the Underground Railroad also. Okay, well, he wrote an autobiography. Harriet Beecher Stowe reads his autobiography, Uncle Tom, in Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is a fictitious book. It's a novel, but it's set in a historical setting during slavery. The character of Uncle Tom is based upon Josiah Henson. Okay, because Uncle Tom wasn't the sellout Negro in the story. He was the slave who refused to beat black women, because they didn't pick enough cotton. He'll take cotton out of his sack and put in other slave sacks to keep them from being beaten. He was a slave who refused to tell where the runaway slaves were hiding, different things like this. Okay. The slave Sambo was the one who followed behind the slave master Simon Legree. And he was the sellout Negro. Sambo wasn't Uncle Tom in the actual novel. The term Uncle Tom has been flipped around because a lot of people haven't read it, don't know that story, and don't know it's based upon Josiah Henson, who was an abolitionist. Okay. So, no, this stuff is very relevant, Angela. If you don't want to listen, you don't have to listen. This stuff is very relevant. If you understood history, you understand how relevant this is. Okay, so when we look at Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, that was his real name. Okay, so he's born in either 1817 or 1818 in Maryland. Okay, he didn't know the exact year or date of his birth. It's estimated he was born in February. He's going to take the assumed birth date of February 14th. February 14th is the assumed birth date of Frederick Douglass. Okay. He's going to be raised largely by his grandmother up until 8 years old. He only had a few interactions with his mother. It's believed he was the product of basically raped by his slave master father. It's believed that. And he's going to eventually run away at the age of 20. Okay. Runs away at the age of 20. Now, while he's enslaved, he's going to learn to read and write. Okay. He's going to go to one of his slave masters at the time. His wife teaches him how to read and write. And the slave master finds out and forbids his wife to teach him. And he basically says that if you teach a slave how to read and write, that slave will want to be free. Okay. So the school children, white school children in the area are going to continue to teach him how to read and write covertly. Okay. He's then going to start reading abolitionist literature as well. He eventually escapes to New Bedford, Massachusetts in 1838. He tries to escape in 1836 and is caught and is going to be in prison for a period of time. But when he finally escapes, he takes the surname of Douglass. He takes the surname of Douglass, which he borrowed from the Scottish romance novel Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott Douglas. Okay. Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott. By Sir Walter Scott, I should say. And there was a character in the story named Douglas. So he takes the last name from that. Okay. He's going to give speeches against slavery, etc. And what happens is you have a lot of white people. See, he was very articulate. Okay. Especially to be a runaway slave. And you have a lot of white people who did not think that he was a former slave. Okay. So because of this, he writes his first of 3 autobiographies. He wrote 3 autobiographies. The first one was in 1845, and it was entitled Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, written by himself. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass by an American Slave, written by himself. Okay. So he writes this. Now, the problem is that he's a fugitive slave. Okay. He ran away. In the book, he gave the location and city of the plantation that he ran away from. All right. So because of this, he's going to flee the U.S. for 2 years. He goes to the British Isles. He's going to give lectures in England, Scotland, and Ireland for 2 years. You're going to have abolitionist friends of his who are going to purchase his freedom so he can come back to the United States as a free man. So he comes back to the United States in 1847. And when he comes back, he founds the North Star newspaper, which is an abolitionist newspaper, in 1847. And it's later going to be called the Frederick Douglass paper. Okay. Now, some people ask, well, why do you need a Black-owned or African-American-owned abolitionist newspaper? Because at the time, one of the leading abolitionists was William Lloyd Garrison. So he's a white abolitionist, and he had an anti-slavery paper or an abolitionist paper called The Liberator. So in the first issue of the North Star, Frederick Douglass explains his reasons for establishing an African-American owned newspaper. And he emphasized that he did not want to seem ungrateful to people such as William Lloyd Garrison. Okay. But he said that it is common sense that those who suffer injustice are those who must demand redress, and thus African-American or Black or Negro authors, editors, and orators must have their own paper with which to share their voices. So basically, he's saying that African people have to tell our own stories. You know, Dr. Wade Nobles talks about how power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. Power coming from the Latin word potere, meaning to be able. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and to have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. So even though you had white allies at the time, what Douglass was saying is that no, we have to be able to tell our own stories, okay, without going through the filter of white allies. We have to be able to tell our own stories without having to go through the filter of Europeans, white allies, adversaries, whatever it is. Okay, very, very important. So so Douglass is going to continue. He speaks across the country. He's going to give hundreds, if not thousands, of speeches. Douglass' life spanned important decades of American history in which the contradictions of race, class, and gender were debated. Douglass played a crucial role in those debates. He spoke out against Northern race prejudice as well as Southern slavery. He challenged segregated Sabbaths, okay, the Sunday, with segregation in the churches on Sunday, either white or Black, and criticized the race prejudice of immigrant labor organizations, which excluded Black freemen. Okay, because you have these. So when you look at when slavery ends, right, 1865, 1866, right after slavery ends, you're going to have these labor unions, these national labor unions that start up. And these labor unions are excluding African Americans from these labor unions. After, from 1619 to 1865, there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that we had in this country. From 1619 to 1865, we were the engineers, we were the shipbuilders, anchor makers, we were bartenders, we were Black. All these jobs, there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865, okay? But from 1866 to about 1880, you're going to have 12 million European immigrants coming to this country, and a lot of the jobs that they got should have gone to us because we were here first, number one. Number two, we were already doing those jobs. So our skills were either as good as Europeans or in many cases even better. If you read How White Folks Got So Rich, the untold story of American white supremacy, one of the things they deal with is the creation of the labor unions right after slavery ends. And these labor unions were created to lock African Americans out of these jobs that we have been doing for free, mostly for free, for hundreds of years. Now that we can compete for wages, and we had better skills oftentimes, now we were locked out of those jobs for the most part. So Frederick Douglass once remarked that his son could more easily become an apprentice in a Boston law firm than in any working man's organization because they were excluding African Americans from the labor unions, okay? So even while realizing this fact, Frederick Douglass became a strong advocate of industrial trade education for the African-American working man. In 1848, Frederick Douglass was the only male speaker at the Seneca Falls, New York Convention, in which Elizabeth Cady Stanton and other activists issued a declaration of women's rights. So Frederick Douglass gave arguably his most famous speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, in Rochester, New York on July 5th, 1852. So his theme was that American liberty was a fraud replete with thinly veiled crimes that would embarrass a nation of savages. His theme, okay, was that America was that American liberty was a fraud replete with thinly veiled crimes that would embarrass a nation of savages. All right. So it's important to understand who invited him to speak. He was invited to speak by the Rochester Ladies Anti-Slavery Society. The Rogers is basically white women. Okay. And he asked them, he said, did you bring me here to mock me? Because he's basically saying, wait a second, the majority, he told him, this holiday of the 4th of July is your holiday. This is not mine. He said, basically saying, my people are still enslaved. This is your holiday. You're celebrating your independence. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to go to this clip. We're going to play this clip again in just a minute here. This is James Earl Jones reading an excerpt of Frederick Douglass, probably his most famous speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. How's everybody doing? Give a shout out to some of the people here on Facebook, Dominique, Marquita, Adrina, Leah. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Now, you all can also listen on Blog Talk. So if you can't continue to listen on Facebook, you can listen on Blog Talk Radio. You can call in, listen by phone, 914-338-1375, 914-338-1375. You can also, we're going to post the link here once again, and the call-in number. We'll post it right there. So we have the link also. You can listen there. And I want to let you all know that visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a new bundle pack of my DVD lectures. Economic Empowerment Bundle Pack number 4, Reclaiming the African Mind. Economic Empowerment Bundle Pack number 4, Reclaiming the African Mind. And this includes 6 new DVD lectures from myself, Michael Imhotep. Ancient Kemet, The Winter Solstice and the History of Christmas. I did this in December of 2016. The Distortion of the Legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The Revolutionary Will Not Be Televised on the Television. I did this January 2017. Great African Women in History, The Mothers of Civilization. Did this February 2017. This is a 4-hour 2 DVD set. Great African Women in History, The Mothers of Civilization. The Light of Ancient Egypt Awakens the African Mind. The Light of Ancient Egypt Awakens the African American Mind to Economic Empowerment. I did this February 25th, 2017. And then last Saturday, June 24th, 2017, in Lansing, Michigan, Malcolm X's hometown. I did Malcolm X 50 years later. Why is he still relevant? Also, you get my presentation from African Liberation Day, May 25th, 2017. African American resistance in the Donald Trump era, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. Okay, that's a 6 DVD set, only $50, regularly $85. We'll post a link right here, and it's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage also. Okay, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so you can give us a call if you have a question or comment. 914-338-1375, 914. Again, 914-338-1375. When you call in, if you have a question or comment, you'll be prompted to press the number 1 key. When you call in, if you have a question or comment, you'll be prompted to press the number 1 key. I want to go to this clip again here. This is James Earl Jones reading an excerpt of Frederick Douglass, arguably his most famous speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. This was a part of the presentation, Voices of a People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, who was a historian, and he has a book by that same name, Voices of a People's History of the United States. Okay, let's go to this clip.
Douglass. Frederick Douglass, once a slave, became a brilliant and powerful leader of the anti-slavery movement. In 1852, he was asked to speak in celebration of the 4th of July.
Fellow citizens, pardon me and allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us? I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. There's not a nation of the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour forth a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and the crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
Okay, so that was James Earl Jones reading an excerpt of Frederick Douglass, arguably his most famous speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. Okay, so when we look at the American Revolutionary War, right, and because the Declaration of Independence is signed during the American Revolutionary War. You have the Continental Congress from 1774 to 1789. And the Continental Congress served as the form of government of the 13 American colonies. Okay, so there are some little known facts about the Declaration of Independence also. As I stated before, first of all, most of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, most of them did not sign it on July 4th. Number one, most of them signed it on August 2nd. Okay, and then also, let's see, when news of the Declaration of Independence reached New York City, it started a riot. July 9, 1776, a copy of the Declaration of Independence had reached New York City with hundreds of British naval ships occupying New York Harbor. Hundreds of British naval ships occupying New York Harbor. Revolutionary spirit and military tensions were running high. George Washington, commander of the Continental Forces in New York, read the document aloud in front of City Hall. A raucous crowd cheered the inspiring words, and later that day tore down a nearby statue of King George III, because King George III was the monarch or ruler in Great Britain at the time. Now, the statue was subsequently melted down and shaped into more than 42,000 musket balls for the fledgling American army. All right. 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. Declaration of Independence, 50 of the 56 signers were Freemasons. Tony Browder deals with this in his book, Egypt on the Potomac. Egypt on the Potomac. And we talk about this and deal with this in some of my presentations and in the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Also, you have, let me see here. Okay. Also, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams are going to both die on the same date. They both die on July 4th, 1826. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. Okay. Both former presidents, both founding fathers, or as Dr. Francis Cress Wilson called them, fondling fathers. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826, 50 years after the Declaration of Independence, after its adoption, according to the National Archives. John Adams assisted Thomas Jefferson in writing the Declaration of Independence and also played a part in persuading the Congress to declare independence as well. Okay. Okay. So now, when we look at, once again, when we look at Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, or who most of us know as Frederick Douglass, right? So as the United States enters into the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, okay, Frederick Douglass was forced to choose sides between African Americans who wanted to return to Africa and those who wanted to remain here in the United States, the land of their birth. So beginning in the 1830s, you have a series of national Negro conventions, and they are held in various northern cities. And they debated whether to go or to stay, whether to leave the U.S. or to stay. Okay. Frederick Douglass advocated remaining and fighting to change the United States. And during this period, Frederick Douglass was confronted by the black nationalist Henry Highland Garnett, who in 1843 called on the slaves to rise up and strike for their freedom. And also he was dealing with Martin Delany in the 1850s, who was involved in the American Colonization Society in support of immigration of Africa. Okay. Now, the passage of the Fugitive Slave Law in 1850 is going to cause Frederick Douglass to become even more radical. The passage of the Fugitive Slave Law in 1850. Okay. And now you already had one fugitive slave law, but you're going to have another one that's going to be passed. And this is fugitive slave law that is dealt with when you deal with the case of this is going to come into play when you deal with the case also of his name escapes me right now. Not Denmark Vesey, but Dred Scott. Okay, you're dealing with the fugitive slave law also. You're dealing with the fugitive slave law also with Dred Scott as well. Okay, now I was looking for one of my notes here dealing with the Civil War, something I dealt with recently. It has so many notes all over the place. Okay, you can give us a call if you have a question or comment. 914-338-1375 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 914-338-1375 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. I guess it's in one of my other file folders. Okay, so you with the passing of the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, we know George Washington is going to sign a fugitive slave law into law. I think it's about 1793, somewhere around there. But with the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, Frederick Douglass began to entertain radical and violent solutions, which would help African Americans gain their freedom and at the same time destroy American slavery. His new radicalism led him to support John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry in 1859 by permitting John Brown to stay at his home for planning strategy. We also know that Harriet Tubman is going to be involved in helping John Brown plan the strategy because she helped get critical information to John Brown also. Now, with the outbreak of the Civil War, okay, Frederick Douglass urged African-American men to support the war effort and specifically to join the Union Army. And he wrote essays such as Men of Color to Arms, Men of Color to Arms. He's going to have two of his sons who were among those men who joined the all-black 54th Massachusetts Regiment as well. And after the Civil War, Frederick Douglass served as president of the Freedmen's Bank. So the Freedmen's Bank is going to be created by the Freedmen's Bureau, right? And you have the Freedmen's Bank, which is going to it's a bank for African Americans to deposit their money into, and you're going to also have African Americans who are serving in the Civil War for them to deposit their money, and then afterwards, and try to give them some type of economic foundation. The Freedmen's Bank. The Freedmen's Bank is going to fail. Frederick Douglass is going to invest $10,000 of his own money into the Freedmen's Bank to try to save it, but it was poorly managed overall by the government. It was also poorly funded as well, basically sabotaged the Freedmen's Bank. Okay, so Douglass recognized the failure of Reconstruction in an 1888 speech entitled "I Denounce the So-Called Emancipation as a Stupendous Fraud." I denounce the so-called emancipation as a stupendous fraud. So Reconstruction ends in 1877. Reconstruction ends in 1877 with the compromise of 1877. With Rutherford B. Hayes, Republican, becoming president in his negotiation. So they negotiate to remove the Union troops out of the South. The Union troops, to a certain extent, were enforcing the rights of the former enslaved African people. The Union troops are going to be removed out of the South. Rutherford B. Hayes becomes president. And you're going to have a lot of the gains that African Americans were making during Reconstruction are going to be rolled back. Okay, so Douglass talks about, he gives a speech in 1888 called "I Denounce the So-Called Emancipation as a Stupendous Fraud." Okay, so in his remaining years in life, Douglass served in a variety of federal positions, which included America's Consul General to Haiti from 1889 to 1891. And actually, here in the last couple of days, I think it may have been today or yesterday, is the anniversary of him being appointed as a Consul General to Haiti. And also, you're going to His activism continued even into his last few years in life, working with Ida B. Wells Barnett. Frederick Douglass co-authored an indictment against the organizers of the 1892 Columbian Exposition held in Chicago in the essay entitled "Why the Colored American is Not in the World's Columbian Exposition." Why the colored American is not in the world's Columbia Exposition. Okay, he's going to pass away in 1895. Okay, so I know Donald Trump just really found out about Frederick Douglass February 1st, 2017, when he gave that address during African American History Month. But Frederick Douglass has been dead for some time. Okay, so for more information on Frederick Douglass, you can read blackpast.org has a good article on Frederick Douglass. Blackpast.org, also history.com, the official website of the History Channel, history.com. They have a good article on some good information on Frederick Douglass as well. Britannica.com as well. They have some good information on Frederick Douglass also. Okay. All right. 914-338-1375 is a call-in number. If you have a question or comment, press the number 1 key to put you in queue to bring you on the air. 914-338-1375 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, press the number 1 key to put you in queue to bring you on the air. Let me see here. Also, you can register for the online class that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, that is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. You can tune in from around the world. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. We deal with thousands of years of history, thousands of years of African history, African American history, all that in that online course. We just posted a link there. The course is only $40. Normally meets on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in from around the world. Okay, let's go to some of your comments here on Facebook. Also, we'll post a call-in number if you have a question or comment as well. 914-338-1375 is the call-in number. Also, if you have a question or comment, let's see here. Let me post this information here. We're broadcasting on the Blog Talk Radio Network as well, so you can listen on Facebook, our Facebook fan page. All right. So that was the broadcast I did. I did that a couple of days ago, okay? And that was done with Frederick Douglass. So I wanted to share that with you because today is the 4th of July. And that comes once again from Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, who wrote the book, African People and European Holidays, A Mental Genocide. African People and European Holidays, A Mental Genocide. But Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, okay? So let me see, we'll go to some of your comments here. Okay, so you can register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with some of this type of information and a lot more. We deal with thousands of years of African history and African American history. A lot of information in the course. You can also go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we have the information there. You can register there. All of my lectures there. I also have 30 of my lectures on DVD. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Okay, James on Facebook said, can you repeat class information once more? Okay, so it's a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach. You could tune in from around the world. It normally meets on Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All this, we do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. So you could go back, watch it over and over again. So as soon as you register, because I know some people said they were going to register when this broadcast is over. As soon as you register, you can watch the first 2 sessions that we did this previous Friday and last Monday. And then we have about 12 hours of bonus content for you to watch also. Okay. So the full course is only $40. Okay. It's not expensive at all. Full course is only $40. And it'll totally blow you away. Seriously, the information we cover, we deal with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. We deal with the work from Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And I think I have this book here. Yeah. This book right here, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Dr. David Imhotep has 713 footnotes. It's thoroughly documented. He deals with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. This was our land stolen from us. We were here before Native Americans even came into existence. You have Asians that come here around 3000 BC, and they intermix with the Africans who are already here, and their offspring are who we know as Native Americans. And when you study Captain John Smith, Jamestown, Virginia, 1607, Captain John Smith talks about being kidnapped by a group of Black Indians. He talks about being kidnapped by a group of Black Indians. Okay. All right. So everybody share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. If you don't follow us already, be sure to follow our fan page. You post a lot of information, articles throughout the day, video clips, a lot of information. Okay. Once again, read get the narrative by this is the first autobiography from Frederick Douglass. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. He wrote this in 1845. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. He wrote this in 1845. This is a former slave writing his own narrative because he was literate. He could read and write. And, you know, even though the majority of enslaved African people were illiterate, the majority of them, you're going to have some exceptions. Frederick Douglass is one of those exceptions. Also, Nat Turner. I did a lecture dealing with the Nat Turner Rebellion of 1831. We have that on DVD at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Nat Turner could read and write. He was literate. This is in Virginia, right? And because he's born in 1800. This is in Virginia. And because of the Nat Turner Rebellion and because he's literate, after the rebellion is put down, after he's executed November 11th, 1831, the state legislature is going to pass a law to outlaw enslaved African people being taught to read and write. They changed the law after the Nat Turner Rebellion, because this is the most successful slave rebellion in this country. There were some that were larger that were planned. This one actually took place. Denmark Vesey, his conspiracy, that was thwarted. That didn't take place. Nat Turner did. They changed the law after the Nat Turner Rebellion to make it illegal for slaves to be taught to read and write in the state of Virginia. This other book you want to get, and we have a recommended reading list of books at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I don't sell books. We have DVD lectures, have all of my lectures. We have documentaries at our website, the Hidden Colors documentaries, Black Friday, some of the documentaries I'm in, like Black Friday and Resurrecting Black Wall Street, The Blueprint. But this book is on our recommended reading list of books. How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. Okay, you want to get this book also. This is from NOI.org. This is from the Nation of Islam's research group. This is deep. This is like Black Labor White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson, except it's much more concentrated. Okay, that's a deep book. And then also you want to get a book that this book I have, The Declaration of Independence and Other Great Documents of American History. So it has the Declaration of Independence. It has, I think the Gettysburg Address is in here. It has the U.S. Constitution in here. You want to get a book so you can study it. It has the U.S. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, things like that. Okay. You may not have to get this book, but when I got this book, it was $2. Don't know what it is now. I got this maybe about 8 years ago, something like that. This is from Dover Books, The Declaration of Independence and Other Great American History Documents. Okay. So we can understand history. You want to be able to understand these documents. All right. So you see in the news yesterday, we seen the July 3rd, this story comes out. Thomas Jefferson's enslaved mistress, Sally Hemings, living quarters found. Thomas Jefferson's enslaved mistress, Sally Hemings, living quarters found. We have this article written by Michael Cotman from NBCnews.com, AtlantaBlackStar.com, picked up this article. This picked up the story from a few months ago where they talked about finding what they believed were her slave quarters and a renovation taking place. This is at the Monticello estate, Thomas Jefferson's estate. This is from NBCnews.com. I have thousands of articles. People, you follow me on Facebook. I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. Thomas Jefferson's enslaved mistress, Sally Hemings, quarters found. Archaeologists have excavated an area of Thomas Jefferson's Monticello mansion that has astounded even the most experienced social scientists. Astounded even the most experienced social scientists. The living quarters of Sally Hemings, the enslaved mistress of Thomas Jefferson, who historians believe gave birth to 6 of Thomas Jefferson's children. Gardner Halleck, who's the director of restoration for Thomas Jefferson's mountaintop plantation, the Monticello estate. He said, quote, "This discovery gives us a sense of how enslaved people were living. Some of Sally Hemings' children may have been born in this room." Okay, so he's the director of restoration for Jefferson's mountaintop plantation, standing on a red dirt floor inside a dusty rubble stone room built in 1809. He goes on to say, "It's important because it shows Sally as a human being, a mother, daughter, and sister, and brings out the relationships in her life." So check out this story. It's about, I printed it up as I print up a lot of articles. It's about 7 pages. NBCnews.com has this story. Thomas Jefferson's enslaved mistress, Sally Hemings, living quarters found. Okay. All right. Let's go to some of your questions, comments here. And we'll talk a little bit about the online course that I teach as well. Very quickly. Okay. So South Carolina seceded from the Union, didn't succeed from the Union February 1st, 1861. It seceded December 20th, 1860. Okay, December 20th, 1860, South Carolina is going to secede from the Union. By February 1st of 1861, you're going to have 6 more states that secede from the Union: Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. Okay, and they're going to be followed by some other states as well. So you're going to have in total 11 states in the Confederacy. You're going to have South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas as well. They're going to, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. They're going to join the Confederacy also. The Confederate States of America exists from 1861 to 1865. 1861 to 1865. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go quickly some of your comments here. Okay, SAV Time said, I saw that this morning about his plantation, referring to Thomas Jefferson. Jackie said, "Thank you. Since childhood, I have had an interest. in our history." Thank you. This is what we do at the African History Network, and read our articles that we have here on our Facebook fan page. Follow us on our fan page, the African History Network. We have DVD lectures here. You can order if you want to from our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can read all of my articles at our website. We have video clips there. A recommended reading list of 60 books also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And if you want to bring me in to do a presentation for your group or organization, you can contact me through our website also, through my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, who else we have here? Okay, Ed Mack. I just want to acknowledge some of the people on Facebook. Ed Mack. Say good show. Kiani, Pinnock, Deep Lord, help me and give me understanding. Barbara Tucker is watching. Alfreda, we should celebrate ourselves in a gracious way because we learned so much in such a short period of time and became masters of a lot of skills. Shanedra said, I thank God I never had to pick cotton. I was probably 11 before I ever saw a cotton plant. I'm also thankful for people like him that teaches beyond slavery, cotton, and tobacco plants. Let's see. No, okay. So we have a lot of people watching. Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay. All right. And at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, you can also sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word, and you can also text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. But go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for the email newsletter there. Okay. So Frederick Douglass is a fascinating figure that we need to understand. I know Donald Trump is just found out about him February 1st, of this year, but Frederick Douglass is a fascinating person, and he was the most prominent African-American figure in the 20th century, Frederick Douglass. All right, so some people if you need me to post a link again to register for the online course that I teach, let me know. We'll post that again. Okay, Philip said thanks to Will Change for inviting him to the broadcast. What's your perspective on Juneteenth? Lola asked. I did we have a video on our YouTube channel about Juneteenth. We deal with some of the history. I think it's all right for us to celebrate Juneteenth. We need to study the history of it, what happened before, what happened after Juneteenth. But I did an extensive presentation dealing with the history of Juneteenth. So if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the home page, click on the banner that says watch our YouTube videos, takes you to our YouTube channel. You can watch the video I did on Juneteenth there. Okay. But quickly, this is what I wanted to say very quickly. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution is known as the 3/5 Compromise of 1787. I know a lot of people think that it says that enslaved African people were 3/5 of a human being. I know that's the popular myth. Okay, and just yesterday I watch MSNBC every day, about 6 to 10 hours on MSNBC, and I was watching Lawrence O'Donnell, and Lawrence O'Donnell had Joanne Reed on. Love Joanne Reed. Joanne Reed, that's sister right there. Man, she's a hell of a journalist. Joanne Reed. Watch AM Joy Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon on MSNBC. Joanne Reed is deep. But he said that African Americans were 3/5 of a human being. He said the Constitution says that. That's not what the U.S. Constitution says. All right. So once again, we started out dispelling the myth about John Hanson, and we talked some about Frederick Douglass. All right. So once again, let's go to this. Right. You can go to loc.gov and read the U.S. Constitution there. loc.gov. You can read the U.S. Constitution there. Okay. That's the Library of Congress's website, loc.gov. Because I hear people keep saying this. And when I heard Lawrence O'Donnell say, I thought Lawrence O'Donnell knew better, but a lot of people don't know this. Okay. So Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, Paragraph 3 of the U.S. Constitution is known as the 3/5 Compromise of 1787. Okay. And there was a debate over how to count the enslaved African population for the purpose of apportionment and taxation. For the purpose of apportionment and taxation. So here's what it says. Representatives and direct taxes. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within the Union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. Person is with a capital P. Person is with a capital P. Okay? 3/5 of all other persons. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress, etc. Okay. First Congress meets 1790. That's when the first that's when the first census is taken, 1790, when the first Congress meets. All right. But if you read this, it says representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned for the several among the several states which may be included within the union, etc. Okay. So they're counting 3/5 of all other persons, meaning they're counting 3/5 of the population of enslaved African people. Nowhere does it say that they were 3/5 of a human being. That's a misinterpretation. And I love Malcolm X. You see the picture of Malcolm behind me. Malcolm's one of my heroes. Just last Saturday, I was in Lansing, Michigan, Malcolm's hometown, doing presentations on Malcolm X. But 1963, I think it was, he was interviewed at the University of California, Berkeley, and he was talking about the U.S. Constitution. He said the U.S. Constitution said we were 3/5 of a human being. That's not what it says. So what this deals with, it says representatives and taxation shall be apportioned. They were trying to figure out when they're drafting the spring of 1787 during the Philadelphia Convention, and they're debating over the U.S. Constitution, largely written by Thomas Jefferson. They're trying to figure out how to count the enslaved population, because you have to figure out how many seats in the U.S. House of Representatives a particular state has. Well, what is that based upon? That's based upon population. This is why it starts out talking about representatives. Representatives in the U.S. House of Representatives, okay, is based upon population. We know the U.S. Senate, each state, no matter how large or small, each state gets 2 U.S. Senate seats. That's why you have 50 states and 100 U.S. senators. So Vermont, which is one of the smallest states in the Union, they have 2 U.S. senators. California, the largest state, has 2 U.S. senators. But how do you figure out how many seats the slaveholding states are going to have? The North is saying, well, wait a second. If you count the full population of those enslaved, you're going to have full control of the U.S. House of Representatives. You'll have total domination in the U.S. House of Representatives because you'll have more seats. The South is saying, well, wait a second. We have more overall population. Okay, that should be counted, because in some northern states, they had more free people in northern states, but some southern states had a greater population overall when you counted the enslaved population. So they're going back and forth, debating this, trying to figure out how do we count this population. Okay, because this is serious. You got to, because this influences politics. All right. So they go back and forth. Some say let's count half of the population that's enslaved. Some say let's count 3/4. They finally decide to count 3/5 of the population that's enslaved. It does not say, nowhere in that Constitution does it say that we were 3/5 of a human being. That's a total misinterpretation and misunderstanding of history. And most people haven't even read the Constitution where it says that. That's Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of Paragraph 3. Okay, the 3/5 compromise. Now, because of the 3/5 compromise, and also because of the Electoral College, which is also created by the U.S. Constitution, okay, the Electoral College, this is going to give the South a greater incentive to maintain slavery, because not only is it an economic incentive to maintain slavery, but also it's a political incentive to maintain power. So when you look at Thomas Jefferson, and when Thomas Jefferson becomes president in 1800, Thomas Jefferson is put over the top in the Electoral College because of the state of Virginia, because of the Electoral College votes in the state of Virginia. So the Electoral College ties into slavery, the enslavement of African people, and gives an incentive for them to maintain, for the South to maintain slavery. All right. And then the seats in the U.S. House of Representatives as well, being able to have more seats, because you can count 3/5 of the population of those enslaved. That gives an additional incentive to the South to maintain slavery. So it's not just economics. The majority of your large slave plantations, majority of them are going to be in the South, things like this. It's not just an economic incentive, it's a political incentive as well. You can check out this article for more information because a lot of people don't understand this. This is a good article from theroot.com, theroot.com, 3/5 clause, why its taint persists, 3/5 clause, why its taint persists, by Dr. Paul Finkelman from theroot.com. He goes through and fairly breaks this down based upon facts and evidence, based upon history. Okay. And he talks about Virginia. He says the origin of the 3/5 clause illustrates the complexity of the issue. Under the Articles of Confederation, so the Articles of Confederation is the previous document because you had the Continental Congress. So that's the previous document prior to the U.S. Constitution that the 13 colonies were operating based upon. All right, the Articles of Confederation. Under the Articles of Confederation, each state had a single vote in the National Congress. In 1787, on the eve of the Constitutional Convention, this meant that Virginia, which had about 690,000 people, and Pennsylvania, which had about 430,000 people, had the same number of votes in Congress as Delaware, the colony of Delaware, state of Delaware, with a population under 60,000, and Rhode Island with a population under 65,000. One of the goals of James Madison and the other framers of the Constitution was to replace the utterly undemocratic system of representation with representation in a new Congress based on population, So you have to understand the history behind the words. You have to understand the history behind the words. Okay. All right. So we'll post this article here on the thread. Read this. Hopefully this clears up this myth. We cleared up the myth about the Black John Hanson being president. We need to clip this myth about the 3/5 compromise also. It does not say, does not mean, does not state that enslaved African people were 3/5 of a human being. But also that is going, the 3/5 compromise is going to be corrected by the 14th Amendment of 1868 as well. It's corrected by the 14th Amendment of 1868. The other thing is, a lot of people don't know that in 1787, when the Constitution is written, the full population of free African Americans is going to be counted. When the full population of free African Americans is going to be counted. They didn't count 3/5 of the population of free African Americans, only those enslaved. They also had to figure out how the enslaved population was going to be taxed as well, because they are property. They are an asset. How do you tax them? You could use slaves to get a loan from a bank. You could take out insurance policies on slaves. You had over 40 insurance policies in this country, over 40 insurance companies in this country that took out insurance policies. They allow slave masters to take out insurance policies on their enslaved Africans on the plantations. Nautilus, the Nautilus Mutual Life Insurance Company was one of them. They started in 1845. Then they're going to change their name to the New York Life Insurance Company. They started in 1845 in Manhattan. Nautilus Mutual Life Insurance Company. 1845 to 1848, they take out about 500 or so insurance policies on enslaved African people. So this is some of the type of information we deal with in the online course that I teach: Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We'll post the link again here. We'll post it right here. There we go. You can register for the online course. This course will blow you away. It's just the tip of the iceberg, what we deal with. And I do a slideshow presentation there. We have video clips, references from articles, books, everything. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay, Jarrell said from Frederick Douglass, read what he says about the 4th of July. Yeah, we talked about that here. Blackden.com has articles about that also. And you can read the full text of his speech. Was July 5th, 1852 in Rochester, New York. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So some of the things we deal with in the online course that I teach, once again, it's a 12-hour, 6-week online slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with history as much as possible chronologically. Okay, you cannot deal with the transatlantic slave trade episodically. Okay, first we have to understand that African people, we've been here in this land we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years. Okay, yes, the transatlantic slave trade happens, but you have to understand the chronology of history, and there were millions of African people who were already here before the transatlantic slave trade starts. Okay, and you're going to have between 388,000 to 1.4 million people who are going to be brought here during the transatlantic slave trade. All right. So you're going to have a very small amount that are brought here. Slave breeding is going to become a big business, especially after 1808. Especially starting in 1808, slave breeding is going to become a big business. The reason why is because of a 20-year clause in the U.S. Constitution, the importation of enslaved Africans is going to be outlawed. Okay. Because of a 20-year clause in the U.S. Constitution, the importation of enslaved Africans is going to be outlawed. All right. And I think we just froze up here on okay. Hopefully didn't freeze up. So this is just give you a brief overview here. These are some of the things we deal with in the online course. Okay, so we deal with how the media negatively portrays African Americans and how this impacts the way we think, feel, act, and behave. We talk about studies like this one right here, article from blackamericaweb.com, TV kills black boys' self-esteem. TV kills black boys' self-esteem. That's from June 2012. A new, precise, and exhaustive year-long study finds that watching television regularly distorts and ultimately destroys the self-esteem of young black males who often find themselves comparing one another to the characters they view on air, leaving them feeling trapped and as if there are very few positive life paths they can aspire to. We know that teaching our children African history, African American history has a big impact, has a positive impact on their self-esteem. If you look at this study here, this is a joint study from the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. AfricanGlobe.net had an article about this January 1st, 2013. Black teens with racial pride do better in school. Black teens with racial pride do better in school. And University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University did a joint study, and they found that parents who use racial socialization, such as talking to their children or engaging in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and connection, offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. Okay, so taking them to African American History Month celebrations, taking them to see documentaries, having them read books dealing with our history, having them watch a broadcast like this, Juneteenth celebrations, going to African American museums. What this does is when parents use racial socialization, such as talking to their children or engaging in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, racial pride, and connection, it offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. This was a joint study from University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. Okay, so let's see very quickly. So we talk about Malcolm X. We talk about Dr. David Imhotep. Page 14 of his book, he talks about the discovery made in Allendale County, South Carolina by Dr. Albert Goodyear in 2004. They found overwhelming evidence of an African presence in South Carolina. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. 13 different disciplines thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. Here's an article from ScienceDaily.com about Dr. Albert Goodyear's discovery in 2004. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. from ScienceDaily.com. So we deal with archaeological discoveries. We deal with a chronology of history as well. This is Dr. Clark and Dr. Wade Nobles. We deal with the Africans known as the Moors and the teachings that the Moors taken to Europe that bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. And the Moors are actually their teachings in bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages are going to set up Columbus to set sail on his 4 voyages starting August 3rd, 1492, when he set sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. We deal with the origins of the term America and Africa, things like this. This is one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Dr. Jeffries teaches us whoever controls the images controls your self-esteem, self-respect, and self-development. Whoever controls the history controls the vision. Okay. All right. We got to get out of here. Hey, remember,